Good morning, third graders. Welcome back to our fictional narratives unit. Today, we will be learning about how to build to the climax in our writing in lesson 3. So, yesterday with Miss W, you were asked to think about your character. You described their motivations and character traits. And here are a couple examples of some student work that I found to be great examples of how they did this in their Google Doc. This student did a great job at describing their character. And what I love is when I look at the motivations, I know exactly what this character is driven by. So that's really important for me as a reader to get to know that character. I also like that this student used different character traits to describe that character, and hopefully they'll be able to bring them to life throughout their story. Here's another example, and I love how there's a lot of elaboration in the character development here about this character, Violet. So I'm not going to read all of this, but I am going to read part of the motivation. So this character is motivated by a sense of justice, which I think is really cool, kind of like how superheroes really care about justice, to stop unfairness everywhere, like the Ice Kingdom. I bet I'll be learning about the Ice Kingdom later. To stop bullying and helping others. And here are some character traits, and I love how this student also knew that another word for brave, a bigger third grade word, would be valiant, intelligent, and kind-hearted. So now that you've done all this work in lesson 2, you're going to start to develop the problem that this character faces. So you guys didn't already start writing about the problem. You were just writing about your character mostly and how they are and what they're like. But today you're going to get the opportunity to really think about what kind of problem will this character face, and what will you learn about the character as they face that problem and hopefully solve that problem. So today I want to teach you that writers plan for the most important and exciting problem, the climax, by thinking about how the problem gets bigger or worse for the character. So the character will always face a problem in a great story. That's part of what drives a story, is when the character faces a problem and has to deal with it. And as readers, we know that in some of the best stories we know, the problem gets worse and worse until it gets better. I want us to think about that with the example of Because of Winn-Dixie. So I want you to think for just a moment. How does Opal's problem get worse when she can't find Winn-Dixie? So do you guys remember the scene where it's thunderstorming outside? They're at the party. Things are going well at first, but then all of a sudden, Opal realizes that Winn-Dixie is missing. Now, the author does something really interesting. Instead of solving that problem right away, the problem actually gets worse and worse and worse. Some of you were thinking about that moment that Opal had with her father, how things were escalating between them and they started arguing. Some of you were also thinking about how Opal got really, really scared and was getting more and more upset. So the problem was getting worse and worse and worse until it could get better. So what that looks like on our story mountain is here in the beginning of the story, you might be introduced to the main problem. So it could be small at first, but then it might get bigger. So here's the main problem. And then throughout climbing up the story mountain, throughout it, the character might face a bunch of little problems here and there. And then the problem's getting worse and worse and worse. There's a lot of stories that go that way because it's oftentimes interesting to see how the character reacts to the bigger and growing problem until it seems like it's going to explode. But then all of a sudden things change. Now, we're not going to go into the solution today, but we are going to be thinking about how that problem gets worse and worse. So let me show you how I did that with the problem that Miss W and I are writing together. And we are writing a story about a kid named Aldo. And Miss W talked a lot about Aldo yesterday in yesterday's lesson. And today we're going to be thinking about the problem that Aldo is facing. So we know that Aldo, his main problem is that Aldo is feeling constantly anxious and frustrated about climate change. He learns in school about how human action is destroying our planet and worries what will happen if we can no longer live on this planet. So I'm thinking about his main problem is that he's worried about climate change. So how might it get worse for Aldo? There's a couple different options I have as a writer, and I'm going to show you what I ended up deciding. The problem gets worse. Aldo overhears rumors on the playground from some kids who say pretty soon Earth will become uninhabitable. They tell him that it's too late to reverse the damage that's been done. Aldo doesn't want to believe them, but deep down, he knows they might be right. So did you see how I did that? Did you see how I made the problem worse? Because he was already worried about climate change, and now he's hearing rumors that because of climate change, we might not be able to stay on our planet. Earth is uninhabitable. Uninhabitable. So now I'm thinking, how could the problem get even worse for Aldo? Remember, my reader will probably want to see that problem get worse and worse and worse until it gets better. So I'm going to think again, how can it get even worse? This is what I ended up deciding. Problem gets even worse. Aldo's anxiety grows as he does more research and discovers that all over the world, sea levels are rising, flooding areas with homes. There are also wildfires throughout the country, including close to where he lives. Many animals are dying because the temperature of the globe is too high as humans burn more and more fossil fuels. Aldo begins to panic. So, this is a really complicated problem because not only is it all about how climate change is getting worse, but it's also about how Aldo is feeling worse and worse and worse. He was feeling anxious already here, and now he's feeling, when he's overhearing his friends, he's getting more and more worried, and now he's about to panic. So, again, I'm thinking, how could his problem get even worse? Just when Aldo thought it couldn't get any worse, he watches the news one night, and the news anchor somberly tells the viewers that we are close to the end of the world. He explains that we have caused too much damage to our one precious Earth, and we won't be able to survive here as a species much longer. Aldo is terrified, but he hasn't given up hope yet. He is determined to survive. Do you see that at the climax? And by the way, I'm going to go back to the mountain and show you where that is. At the climax is right at the top of the mountain. The problem is about to get so worse, but do you see what I did? Let me read that last sentence I did. Aldo is terrified, but hasn't given up hope yet. He is determined to survive. Now, if I just ended my story here, my reader wouldn't know how Aldo solved his problem. But I know that my reader is thinking, oh, I bet the next section is going to be about Aldo solving his problem because he wants to survive. So let me go back and see. On a different day, we're going to be teaching you what happens down the other side of the mountain. What happens during the solution and the Hollywood ending. So today, all I want you to focus on is how that problem gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's about to get better, but you don't reveal the ending yet. So you don't have to write that part in it yet. So now it's your turn. Today, you are going to be filling out just what I did. So you're going to be in your document, you're going to see a page that looks just like this. So let's read the directions together in 3, 2, 1. Fill out the graphic organizer below to brainstorm how your character's problem gets worse and leads to the climax. Remember, the climax is the very top of this mountain where it's like the worst of it, the worst problem, part of the problem, as it gets worse and worse. So let me show you in that document where to find that. So again, you're in Google Classroom, you're in classwork, and this is at least for Miss Klein's class. I don't know about Miss W's, but we have our narrative fiction brainstorming here, and you should be able to click on it. Even though you've already written on it, it will be the same document. So once we click on it, we'll see you should already have day 1 filled out, and then you should already also have day 2 filled out, which you did yesterday about your character. So if you're all caught up, then you're going to move down to this part right here, and you're going to type in, just like Miss Klein did, first think of that main problem your character faces, and then think about how it gets worse and worse and worse leading up to the climax, the top of that mountain. Okay, I'm very excited to see all the progress you make on that. And again, you don't have to write as much as Miss Klein, but we would like to see complete sentences so that this is going to make your job even easier once we start actually drafting our story. Okay, Best of luck to you. I can't wait to read them.